Folks, this is Brian with my continuing review of the Runequest role-playing in Glorantha Manuscript I picked up at Gen Con. Got some quiet time, so I figured let's do this one because this is going to be a bit of a long one. It's on the game system. And we'd mentioned before about Vasana Saga, illustrating rules and stuff like that. Well, they also have just these snapshots of storyline on her. And right at the beginning of the game system, there's a one-page story about how she, in a situation where she got set up for why she's gone adventuring kind of thing. I think it's a great story. I really liked it a lot. And it's written in a diary style, which is kind of cool. The game system that goes into time. We talked a little bit about the campaign by season earlier. I did misspeak. There we go. About the number of seasons. There's 5 seasons. Somehow I got the 8 weeks confused with the 8 seasons somewhere. Each season is made of 8 weeks, and each week is represented by one of the power runes. Remember the dichotomies, the 4 dichotomies for total of 8. And then they talk about narrative, excuse me, narrative time. Several days go by, that kind of thing, while you're playing the full term in the melee round. And they have this skills and ability time, which was handy. Is they talk about everything from instantaneous, invoking a rune, to a rune spell rather, to things that can take 1 hour or a day or many days. And they give examples. For example, act could take just a couple of melee rounds. You're trying to do a short little confuse somebody kind of roll with your acting, or if you're actually in a play, it's going to take several minutes, maybe an hour, that kind of thing. So I think of a lot of different examples for that. They go through the Gloranthan days, although in this section they don't list them all out. They did earlier. And then the weeks and the seasons. Okay, and they have a section there on lunar phases, because lunar magic is tied to the lunar phase for the red goddess, and so that ties in things. They have a correlating phase per day of the week kind of deal. And then there's sacred time. So between the 5 seasons, after storm season and before spring, there's this 2-week or 14 days of sacred time, which is all dealing with ceremonies and rituals and stuff to rebirth the earth and start the spring season. And then it gets into ability use. This is abilities. There are skills, runes, or passions, and in certain instances, characteristic roles. And then there's some discussion there as a GM on when to require roles. Obviously, you don't want to bog things down. Now, I've had weird things happen. I went running. That was actually a couple of years ago now, on base, and I was just cruising on. I got onto the road. Was there some rubble? Yeah, but something happened. I ended up twisting my ankle and falling down the hill. It hurt bad. I almost cried. I had to just sit there for like 5 minutes till I could just limp back to my office. Not a good time. But normally he's going running. You don't make a roll for that. Don't worry about it. It's an easy thing. Automatic success. Don't worry about it. That kind of stuff. But if it's going to add to the drama of the environment or the situation or the story, maybe it's worth rolling for. I talk a little bit about skill bases and characteristic roles. And they discuss results: success and failure, critical success, special success, fumbles, and they've got the chart there of your percentage. It goes from 0-1 to 122, and then your crit number and your special number and your skill actual success, and then your failure number and fumble at the end. And they discuss reattempts, and this is something I don't remember seeing in rules before, but I know everybody's got house rules on it. But they actually have a thing on doing a reattempt, and some mechanics for that. They get into opposed roles with the famous power versus power chart, and they talk about how you can have a winner and a loser, or you can have a tie, or you can have 2 losers. Now, something about the tie, and this came out in some other mechanic I was using for the quick start at Gen Con, because you're looking for a greater success versus a lesser success. The person with a greater success actually wins. And in the quick start rules, they said the person with the higher die roll. And this ties again with this tie. A tie is when you both have the same level of success or type of success, they call it here, being either critical, special, or normal. But that the die rolls that you made were the same number. That makes a tie. I have an issue with this. If I have a 95% chance on something, and the other guy has got a 5% chance. Well, not go do that. A 25% chance, and I've got 50. We'll do it easy. 25 and 50. We both roll 24. He made his by 1. I made mine by 26. I feel that would be a greater level of success, even though they're both normal. So that's how I would adjudicate it, is who made it by the greatest span. But I guess for simplicity mechanics, you use the actual die roll numbers for that kind of thing. Then go to abilities that are above 100%. And specifically for combat, but it does discuss some other, when you have opposed kind of rolls, that you can either have increased capability for critical and special, or you can decrease that opposed roll, be it a parry or a scan or search if you're trying to hide, that kind of thing, by your amount over 100, which then lowers your skill to 100, and so you crit on a 5 or less, and you special on a 20 or less. Rather than if you had 150, crit on 8 or less. I don't quite buy off on that. There might be a design behind the mechanics on double dipping, but my house rule would be if you're at 100 and whatever, you subtract from their parry plus your crit and special go up. That's just how I would do it. That's my house rules. Then they go much more in depth in augmenting abilities. Again, an ability, a skill, a passion, or a rune, and you can use any of those 3 to augment any of those 3 roles. But they have down here, an ability can only be used once per session to augment a task. So if I were to invoke a rune or a passion to augment a skill that would be associated with that, that means I cannot use that rune or that passion again for the rest of the session. Maybe they're trying to keep the number of augmentation rolls down, which I obviously would do, but that seems like an arbitrary factor, and I'll talk about more arbitrary factors when we get to skill checks too. So I don't know if I would limit it like that. I don't know. I think within the mechanic itself, there's some pros and cons, and in fact, we'll get into that just next. But the augmenting roll that you make, if that's a critical success, you get a plus 50 on the skill roll you're trying to do. If it's a special success, you get plus 30. If it's a regular success, plus 20. If it's a failure, minus 20. If it's a fumble, minus 50. Now, I haven't gotten to the part yet with passions and runes on this fumble and failure piece. However, with the quick start rules, they have that in there. And I had this happen with my last game at Gen Con. One of the players was using one of her runes to augment a skill that she was trying to do. She rolled her rune percentage and got a failure, which means she got the minus 20 on her regular skill roll, which now was, I think at that point it was like nothing. But in the quick start, it talks about if you're using a rune to augment a skill and you fail at your rune, then you cannot use any skill associated with that rune until you go to a holy day, cleanse yourself, that kind of stuff. That, I think, is enough deterrent to keep people from being abusive in augmenting rolls. And then if you hit a fumble, your rune actually goes down by like 10% or 1d10 or something. plus the whole other thing about, you can't use anything associated with your rune. So they have something similar with passions. I just don't recall, and we never had any issues with that come up during my gaming. But it's similar. If you fail or fumble on your passion roll to augment a skill, things happen. Bad things happen, and I think that's a disincentive enough to keep it from worrying about having to only use it once per session, kind of thing. So that's my rationale. Now it also says you can use augmenting on the resistance table. If that's kind of cool, and that one PC can use skill, passion, or rune to augment another PC's skill, passion, or rune. And they have a little paragraph where they're discussing, it's got to apply, association, all that kind of stuff. And at first I got, but then, I started thinking about it. If you really want to motivate somebody, there are ways to do that, invoking your honor passion or your loyalty to clan passion, or, I can't think of any reason offhand for runes, but still, that kind of thing could apply where you're trying to motivate somebody else to do something. So, hey, sounds good. And in that paragraph of this part of the book, it says that for passions and runes, there are additional effects. See the passions and runes chapter, which we'll get to eventually, right? Okay, then we have the infamous resistance table. And they state specifically that it's not intended for skills, runes, or passions. And that generally it's for characteristic type rolls. And then specifically, power versus power, when you're trying to overcome somebody's power in order to cast a spell on them. Strength versus size, trying to pick something else up. Strength versus strength, if you're trying to, arm wrestle or something. Potency of a poison versus either constitution or hit points. And for grappling and for knockbacks. That's specifically what resistance table is for. Next section is damage. And they go into hit locations. And this is something I was disappointed in seeing, is that they've got the standard hit location chart. And to be honest, seeing that on the back of either Apple Lane or Snake Pipe Hollow, I don't remember now which one it was. I keep saying Snake Pipe Hollow, but it's probably Apple Lane. Seeing that's what drove me to Runequest. That's what sold me on a combat system where you got hit locations. And in Runequest 3, I don't know if it was in the regular rules or in some of the supplements, they have a separate chart for missile weapons than you do for melee weapons. And missile weapons or thrusting weapons, thrown weapons, all that kind of stuff. Because the torso, the chest, and abdomen are fairly large. They're fairly easy to hit with a missile weapon. Not so much with an axe or a sword or a mace, because you got things in the way. So I had incorporated all that stuff into my character sheets already, where you've got melee and missile allocations. And we'll probably get more into this when we start talking about armor and stuff, but I've actually adjusted mine as well. I took some hints from Harnmaster, which has a very in-depth hit location chart, but my decision to modify the chart is based upon armor. If you look at somebody wearing Bronze Age armor, the cuirass, and if you're looking at a Roman legionnaire, he's got these sleeve things made out of some kind of splint or something, right? And he's got a little skirt on there. But if he's wearing a chain shirt, the sleeves go down to here. It's part of the shirt, and it either goes down just past the crotch or goes down all the way to the knees, Armor's designed to protect that way. And so I actually split arms and legs up between upper arm and lower arm and upper leg and lower leg. And then I just use the die roll if it's odd or even tells you left or right. That's just, my own house rule kind of thing that I did. But I was really disappointed that they didn't have a missile chart in there. They just had the melee chart. And then it goes into results of damage. And it talks just in generic, your total hit points. If your character goes down to 1 or 2 hit points, you're unconscious. If you go to 0, you're going to die at the end of the round. I have issue with that as well. I wouldn't have a person go unconscious until they hit 0. And then I would actually have them bleed out to their constitution. And that ties into some of the rules for locations that we'll get into later, where if you get in a location and it goes to 0 or 0 or lower, then you use the use of it. If you go 0 or lower, you lose the use of yourself. You go unconscious. So that's how I interpreted that. So that's another house rule that I'll definitely be implementing. In fact, we'll get into that next. Damage equal to or greater than the hit location's hit points. You use the lose the use of that limb. If it's the admin, chest, or head, you're in the process of dying. If you don't get first aid within 10 minutes, your character's dead. Equal to or greater than 2 times the hit points that hit location. Limbs can only take that much. They can't take any more physically against your hit points for that. And again, admin, chest, or head, at that point, you are bleeding and you lose 1 hit point per melee round. And that's where I got that 1 hit point per melee round thing, was from there. And then if you inflict 3 times or greater hit points, for example, he's got 2 points in his arm and you do 6 points of damage to his arm, it's irrevocably maimed. Again, head, chest, or abdomen, you're dead. So getting back to the whole thing about 1 or 2 hit points and going to 0 hit points, that's my rationale for it. 0, you go unconscious, and you start bleeding 1 point per round. You go negative your con, you're dead. And there's a paragraph titled Death and Permanent Damage. And it just talks about death. It doesn't talk about permanent damage in that paragraph. But it talks about how when a person dies, their soul goes the Glorantha equivalent of the River Styx, right? And within 7 days, they've gone to judgment kind of thing. So you've got 7 days to resurrect somebody is what it comes down to. After that, you've got a hero quest to the Undying Lands to find this guy and bring him back, or gal. I don't mean to be sexist in any way. Then the section on healing, talk about spirit, rune, and sorcery magics can all heal, and first aid can heal. One thing they say they state that healing magic can be used any number of times, and this is, I guess, more of the, I don't want to say meanness, but I just don't buy off on that, especially when we get to rune magic and you find that everybody's got heal wound. But why not have the way I do it, and I should have brought one of my character sheets to show you. I made a character sheet, and it's got the hit locations for melee missile, like I mentioned, and it's got your armor points and your hit points, but then I got a space for inflicting damage, so you can keep track. I got hit for 3 points, I got hit for 2 more, got hit for 5, that kind of thing. So you can see how many wounds your limbs took. Now I'll let you do a heal, as much as you can do your heal, for each of those wounds. I'll let you do that. I'll let you leave it to first aid for each of those wounds as well. So maybe it's kind of a gimme anyway, but maybe it doesn't. But they talk about healing, doing first aid per limb, like hit location, that kind of thing. Maybe I'll think about that again. But that was just some of the discussion I had on healing. They just let you can heal. If you got to heal 1, you can heal anybody from 1 or 2 hit points as they've gone unconscious, all the way back to the max hit points. And the only thing it can't do is if your limb is irrevocably maimed or severed. It takes a heal 6 to reattach a limb or to undamage it. So I buy off on that. But essentially, say if you got to heal 1, give yourself enough melee rounds, you can heal anybody all the way up to full health. And I just have an issue with that. While healing magic is special and it can take care of a lot of problems, I just don't know about being able to do that much healing. When they talk about natural healing, your healing rate, you heal your healing rate in each hit location every week. For me, it'd be on the Holy Day. And that's actually something I stole from Pendragon, where you healed on Sundays. Okay, and talk about resurrection. And Shalana Arroy is the only cult that has the resurrection rune spell, and it's a special rune spell, not a general rune spell, and we'll talk more about that later as well. And they advertise they'll do it for anybody, and there's no cost. However, in practice, there are preferences on who can get healed, and there is also a social rule in place that you generally pay, or you don't pay, you make an offering of the Were Guild or the life price or the ransom of that person who gets resurrected as an offering to the temple. Okay, encumbrance, just like regular Runequest, it's all in things. And it's just, I know it's the same for Runequest 3. I don't remember if it's the same for Runequest 2. It's the average of your strength and con, but no greater than your strength. And then there are penalties if you go over that encumbrance, -1 to your movement, -5 on all of your agility, manipulation, and stealth skills. And then the book actually specifically mentioned weapon skills, even though all weapon skills are manipulation skills. Yeah, I mean, it's to just reinforce that. And there's a little subparagraph on dodge. Your dodge goes down by 1% for every point of encumbrance you have. And then once you get over your max, it's 5% for every point. They have a little piece on coins. It's kind of interesting because this is one thing that I generally have issue with RPGs. Is you got people get the Dragon Horde, 58,000 coins. How much does that stuff weigh? I mean, 100 coins. That's pretty hefty, right? In fact, 160 coins, if you're talking about Clax, the copper coin, or Lunars, the silver coin, it's 160 coins for one thing, one encumbrance. So if you're talking about a coffer with 500 coins in it, how big is that? Not a very big coffer, right? You're talking about a chest full of gold. Nobody could be able to pick that up. The chest itself would not be able to support that kind of weight inside. But yeah, that's the physicist in me coming out. But tying into that, historically, silver or gold is 16 times as expensive as silver. There's a silver gold base thing, and historically it's been 16 times. And that goes all the way back to like 1600s. And so when I'm talking about coins, and you got a silver coin, and if you see Roman coins, you'll see how small coins really are and how thin they are. They're nothing like modern coins. Modern coins are hugely thick compared to ancient coins. But anyway, you're trying to figure out, you got a silver coin, that's your base, right? Gold coins, again, 16-to-1 ratio, but it's on mass, so it's weight, not necessarily volume. But it should be fairly close. So since Glorantha wheels, which are the gold coin, are worth 20 lunars for the silver coin, the gold coin would be a little bit larger than the silver coin. Because if they're the same size, it'd be 16 times. That kind of thing. This is the kind of stuff that I look up on my off hours. Because it needs to make sense to me. It needs to be reasonable. That's just the way I play. But they actually take this into consideration because it's only 100 wheels for a point of encumbrance, and 30 bulks, which is the lead coin of the trolls, for an encumbrance. There's a size equivalency chart later on. If your size, something will have this size but weighs this much, that kind of thing. Again, weight isn't always the issue. Sometimes it's just volume. Things are just odd shaped, hard to get a decent handle on. An empty box is very large, that kind of thing. And then they have a whole section on chases. And they have their own little mini system on how chases work. You've got different distances, and you can change distances based upon rolls and things like that. It's about a page long, so it's not too bad, but I thought it was kind of interesting. I know I could have used that when the rock lizards were chasing down the Kalimari cattle, but I bluffed my way through all that. Then we go into natural conditions and damage, and talks about darkness and diseases and drowning, asphyxiation, falling, fire, poison, thrown objects, rocks, clubs, that kind of thing. Exposure to both heat and cold, hunger and thirst, just standard sorts of, these are the environments, these are the damage, those things occur. But another thing I have to take issue with is the light distances they give for light sources. They say for a candle, you can read at a 1 meter radius. Have you ever tried to read by candlelight? I've actually been to Thomas Jefferson's house here in Virginia, where he's got his little desk, this little candle set up on these little spinner things and wheels and stuff, so he can position it just right for what he's reading, because he's got a little table that holds the book up and everything for him. You're talking feet, 1 foot for reading from candlelight, and he's got 2. Excuse me. So I got an issue with reading at a 1 meter radius. Now, will I give you a meter diameter? I might do that. You're holding the candle 1 meter, your hex, you can read in that hex, that kind of thing. Torch, 12 meter radius. Again, a radius, 12 meters. There's a guy on YouTube somewhere who, not debunking, but trying to bring realism to people's concepts of what medieval life was like. And one of those is being outside with a torch and how far you can see. And he's out next to a rock wall somewhere, like in a forest area. And he's talking to the camera and stuff. And he starts walking over to the side until you can actually see that rock wall finally. It's only a few feet away. Now, can you, especially when the light source is here. The light source is out there, yeah. I've done U.S. Army's light and noise discipline course that we had at ROTC. I can tell you how far you can see it and see a cigarette and hear people talking. It's a long ways. But being able to see enough to read with a torch, I don't know. Would I give you 12 meter diameter? Yeah, I would give you that. It's like a mega hex. And they talk about lanterns, and they're talking about a bullseye lantern, because they're talking about reflective surfaces in a single outlet that will go out for 18 meters. Yeah, I have no problem with that one. Well, it's been almost a half an hour, which is I was kind of planning on being that or less for the game system. And that's my last card. So the next one's going to be on skills. It'll be a short one, and then there'll be another long one after that. So if you're watching this, great. If you like some of the stuff I'm putting out, please subscribe and like them if you think it's worth for somebody else to see, and spread the word. I'm trying to get Runequest out there. I haven't had a chance to talk to my local gaming store about running some Runequest there, but that's next on my list. That and AetherCon. I'm going to try to figure out this Roll20 thing. But I've been taking my Labor Day fairly light, did some yard work, and then been taking notes on the manuscript. So I've got some more stuff coming, maybe even tonight. Ciao.